traditional factoring space, yeah, and that was, you know, where I was like, I think that would make difference was, and because I didn't want to like in the SaaS model, so we built a lot of software over the last 2 years. That worked really well, but it didn't require financing. It was used by like large ad networks and so on. And someone in charge who was like more like one of the SaaS guys in the background, and I always wanted to be in the scene, you know. So yeah, before that was more like a micro, and now we're building. Yeah, we're still raising. So if you have any friends?
You mean money from investors? That's what
We did our first four. We did our first four investments now. Okay. But we are raising next year.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the next.
Yeah, enjoy Berlin and see you soon again. Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye there. Okay, welcome to the next talk. We have. Am I telling your name right? Oleh Yermilov. Okay, perfect. From Playtika, and about mastering privacy and compliance. And I always remember Playtika with finding hidden gem games, right?
Yeah,
this is like
one of the genres.
Yeah,
more than 30
okay.
games, so one of them definitely is hidden games.
Yeah, okay. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and then if you need my help for the Q&A, I'm also here.
Thank you. Hi everyone, nice to see you all here. I'm Oleh from Playtika, and today we're going to talk about privacy and compliance from a more practical approach, and let's talk about the legal aspect of that and so on. But any decent presentation about privacy definitely should start with the legal disclaimer, so whatever you're going to hear today, it's not legal advice, so just guys, we can get fun. But in general, I want to share with you the best practices and approaches and show you that the privacy, making right way with the personal data of your players is not that hard from technical perspective and talking. It's more like about how exactly it should be implemented in the studio, and mostly on the legal side it's kind of a bit blurred, so I want to remove this blur, remove the shadow of war, and to be more specific what we talk about when we talk about privacy and making things right. Okay, privacy. I have a very, yesterday pop up in my mind a very interesting comparison, not a comparison but similarity. What do you think is common between nuclear plant and mobile game? Both have some radioactive elements, and they cannot operate without them, but if they leak, then you screw, right? So there is a disaster. And in mobile gaming, it's personal data of your users. Let's have some cases. TikTok is not yet the mobile gaming company, but in general, you can see that the sums for violating the privacy rules can be huge. And publishers, and for example, Google prevents a lot of applications being published because they are violating the privacy. We see that more and more countries, like in the US and Australia, like they enforce privacy laws. They step into effect. Fortnite issues on Epic Games, Angry Birds, Zynga, Find, what else? Okay. So you got the idea, right? So it's something that we need to pay attention, otherwise things can go quickly and not go west. Talking about the approach, it's very simple. Like there are 10 principles, 10 steps, and first one is lawfulness. Please raise your hand who in their company process private, personal data of their players, users, whatever, if it's not even gaming company. Okay, at least one person. Others don't process it. Okay. Okay, got it. Got it. No one processes. But the bad thing is, you work in the company, you must probably process it. So lawfulness means that you do not use it for some illegal purposes, as simple as that. So if you're not using this for something illegal, and you're not seeing me right now, so you can put a tick, you already follow the first principle. Second one is purpose limitation. We're going to talk about this and major purposes in mobile gaming. Data minimization, it's a bit different. It's what kinds of personal data we in mobile gaming typically use. storage limitation, we must be very specific when we talk about privacy, and I will show you that this is not that hard. Data protection measures, it's also a very simple concept. There are several approaches and strategies how to achieve that. We quickly go through that. My idea is to kind of, on the very high level, show you the map, how you can approach better privacy, so you would be on the safe side if something doesn't go very well, or you get the audit external unexpectedly. Okay, so we talk about accountability and audit, so that's the principle that you must be ready for the audit and you must have people accountable for the personal data. You cannot kind of say if someone comes and asks who actually is responsible for bringing this data, it immediately goes to the executive plan accountability, but you need to have someone being accountable for that, probably who sits closer to the data. Data subject rights, that's something that we need to follow. It also goes to the privacy on its own. It's a right to be anonymous, so no one will actually disturb you if you not expect them to do that. So people have rights for their personal data. Quickly gonna go through these rights. Data breach notification, it's the principle that if something you see a privacy leak, then you need to notify users, identify the users affected. And privacy by design, it's very something that's very ambiguous. Nobody knows what is privacy by design, how to follow it, or whether we follow it in a very good position or not. But we're going to quickly talk about that, and I'll give you an example. And transparency. Everything that goes about personal data, it must be transparent internally. It doesn't mean that you need to expose it to everyone, right? It means that how you protect it must be very clear, at least for you, and not also for others people outside, and also how data flows. Why are you using this? Who uses this? Who accesses this? And so on. Okay, let's go principle by principle. So purpose limitation, so it's a kind of a comma razor. Don't use personal data if you don't need it, as simple as that. But let's see, in mobile gaming actually we cannot operate like a power plant without some radioactive elements. We cannot operate without personal data. What we typically do with that, it's account management. Our players want to have accounts, so definitely we need to keep some personal data about them. At this account name, it can also have some personal data, or if they use their email for credentials or bingo, we have personal data. Payment processing, all the payment processing details, typically it's personal data, it's a card details, and so on. So it's a very specific beast. It doesn't go under all the rights. For example, right to be forgotten. If I forgot about all the payments that were made, then I'm gonna have some financial issues, right? Player social connectivity, we want to reach our players back. In-game and cross-game analytics, definitely, it's for AI, for marketing, that's what we need. And here marketing comes and advertising, so we want to know our population and we want to reach back to our players. External communication, support, feedback, surveys, we have support team, we want to talk back to our players. Loyalty programs, rewards, let's email, and as a part of our marketing campaign or whatever, we actually want to propose players with some rewards. Legal compliance, for example, age verification, what it means that we need to process personal data to understand that the person that plays is under, like it's 18 plus, for example, right? It's not a kid. And fraud prevention, so we need to keep personal data for our players to prevent fraud, and it might happen. But like I'm talking about personal data, and we need to be more specific what personal data is. And here we come to the third principle, which is called personal data minimization. So second principle is understand your use cases, and I just gave you the examples. And if you use data, you don't use it, you just keep it, and you don't see the purpose for keep using it, please drop it, and that's it, you'll be in a safe place. Now it's personal data minimization. Now what it means that you need to clearly understand what kind of personal data you need in order to keep your business running. And there are two, oh my god, what's happened? There are two major categories of personal data, operational and analytical. Operational, that's your day-to-day, that user log in, it plays, uses some features, enjoys, has fun, and all the transactions that they have and game transactions as part of your operations, and the data flows over there, also including personal data. And this data is being stored in your client, in your backend. And analytical data, that's where you aggregate it for a long time, for years, and then you use it for marketing, for ML training, for segmentation, and so on. And what are the types of operational data? It's credentials, as I said, for example, Facebook ID, email, personal attributes like first name, last name, something happened with the format. Birthday, country, state, city. It's very interesting that I'm not saying IP address. You need to consider very clearly like whether you need to have IP address. Maybe probably you just need to IP to location, understand the location, and keep nothing but city, for example. Like of course a country and not lower than city. I'm not talking about streets. If it's not Adams town in a specific ocean where lives just 47 people, so if you have Adams town players from there, you should not keep even city there because like it's only 40 people living and it's definitely you can identify these people if they play your game. And what else they have to do there, right on an island in the middle of nowhere. Payment details, I already mentioned that it's part of your operations. Typically you don't need payment details in analytics at all. You don't kind of aggregate payments with payments based on some, I don't know, transaction ID. And if you talk about analytics, we talk about marketing use cases and many, many others, reports and so on, and you need to have your data from different sources being joined together. Think of AppsFlyer, for example. You take it from AppsFlyer, then you take it from device, and you need to join and analyze your marketing campaign and so on. The same goes to a DFA. All the device identifiers. Device, it's personal data. If it's not, I don't know, like internet cafe and there is a PC where like 100 people playing from that. So in that way, you may keep it, but you also need to understand that this is the case. And you can even not take it on the right to be forgotten. So if one person out of 100 asks you to delete this data, you don't need to do that. Personal data linkability, very important concept. People need to think twice. Those who collect the personal data need to think twice whether it's something that doesn't look like personal data might be personal data. What I talk about? If it's a direct linkability, very simple. You have some attribute, some piece of data, like in the security number, and it goes directly to the person using some database where all the users are being, like all the security numbers are being kept. But things a bit more complicated if we talk about other identifiers. In our case, like AppsFlyer ID. I guess those who know who it is, you understand that this is personal data, but how it happens. There is no kind of a direct mapping from AppsFlyer ID to a user. But in AppsFlyer, they have a database where I have this mapping. And even though you don't see this mapping, you still need to treat AppsFlyer ID as a personal data. If people ask you to delete it, you need to delete also their AppsFlyer ID. Why so? Because in AppsFlyer, there is a mapping and a link from your AppsFlyer ID to the device ID. And if somebody steals your data and steals AppsFlyer's data, so in that case, we can find the device of the specific user. So, and this is called indirect linkability. There is also a concept of weak linkability and strong. It means that, for example, if I have personal data like country, and this is a weak linkability, and I have name, first name John, how many Johns in the US, right? Like millions. And this is a weak linkability. I just use two types of personal data. But if I add more and more last name, okay, it's already easier. So here we are, and it becomes stronger. It can, like personal data can go together and become more stronger unless it directs a specific user. Now we go, okay, we identified use cases. We identified the types of personal data. We need to think how to protect it. It's quite simple. There are four major strategies. You can encrypt it, meaning you have a key, you unlock this data with the key. If you need to have original values, then you need to this key and kind of go back into original, convert it. Things different with pseudonymization. So pseudonym means that we have, like with AppsFlyer ID, it's a kind of a pseudonym for the device ID. And you can have your own player ID, for example. It's also a pseudonym. And somewhere in your system, you have this connection between player ID and first last name, for example, and email. So you need to understand that pseudonyms are also personal data. But when you destroy the link between them, then they become not personal data. For example, if a user asks to be forgotten also in AppsFlyer ID, then in that case, this link destroyed. AppsFlyer ID doesn't mapped to the device ID. And we have anonymization and masking, and they are making personal data unusable for us, but also invisible for frauds, and it's not personal data anymore. Anonymization means like just substitute everything with empty strings, first, last name, email. And masking means make it look like a personal data, but it is not. It doesn't direct a real person. For example, like you can change your email to anything. It looks like email, but it will not be your email. So this is what masking is about, and it makes life of malicious users more complicated. And the thing is that, yeah, encrypted and pseudonymized data is still personal data, and anonymized and masked data is not personal data anymore. So these are four, when people say data protection and so on, like, okay, like there are two streams, you still have this as a personal data, so you need to care about it, or you completely anonymize and mask it. So the latter one is less usable typically, and that's what being used as the right to be forgotten. And the players ask their personal data to be deleted, we can just mask it and so on. But for data protection, we typically use encryption and pseudonymization. And data subject rights, very quickly, you know, I guess, most of them. By the way, I'm with privacy like for 7 years already in several companies. I worked with that, and back then it was, oh my God, which one the most important? But after 7 years, we understand that right to be forgotten is the most important. That's when players ask the company, actually, the mobile game, to forget about that. Right to access. They have an ability to access their personal data, and right to restrict processing. Actually, you can keep data but not use it. I don't even know why mobile gaming. We actually just suspend the service for the player, and we do not. They cannot play the game, and that's it. And the right to rectification, it means like to update their personal data. But you need to provide, I don't know, via support ticketing system or whatever. For these rights. Privacy by design, what we talk here about. I'm as an architect, it's the first rule, and I'm trying to understand what is a good design, what is a bad design, but main idea is that you need to, if you start your business, you need to think about privacy, how you will protect your players from different dangerous activities for malicious users. So it's think about centralizing personal data. Keep it in one place. Don't let it go anywhere. And we go here to the second rule, which is avoid proliferation. Don't put personal data in all the types of events. And for example, if you bring events for analytics, and you take one event with email and put it in 10 tables for different flows, different users, and now it's for you right to be forgotten will be a mess, a big mess. You'll spend a lot of time and efforts to remove this data. You need to early identify and classify the personal data that you have. There are different categories of personal data, and we just named a few, but most probably you don't need more than 10 or 12 types, like device IDs, different types of them. There can be some credentials, of course, definitely, but you don't need them, for example, for analytics. Access management, I guess it's clear. Whenever you keep your data, you need to understand who goes there, who can go there. Audit trails, that's how you log whoever uses your data, whoever has access to it. You need to have some logs. End-to-end security means that you need to have physical protection, meaning encryption, data in transit, data in rest. Your technical guys know that, but it's kind of just a one brick on overall picture. Regular reviews and updates, at least one per year. You need to ask yourself a question in what position I am, whether I'm good with privacy or not, whether there is some degradation. We have more data sources, we didn't check them, and so on. Transparency, definitely it's important for you and for future audit. By the way, a year ago here in Berlin there was a talk that gaming industry is lags behind the privacy, not much changed, and this is very bad because people who conduct audits, they become more skillful, they know way better now their work, and they know how companies should comply with. So you need to expect, you need to provide the transparency for them to avoid not kind of in-depth, spending more time with them, when they will be very picky about what they see and how you protect your data. Okay, personal data and operations. I split how you design your protection for personal data in two phases, for operations and for analytics. For operations, it's pretty like several use cases. Authentication. Player provides their credentials via the client, keep it in some way, for example, here authentication service and credentials being stored there like forever, right? And you assign from after this authentication to the player, like player ID. Second use case is customer support. Players writes a question via some form, and we have some support tools, and we keep this chat, for example. In the chat there can be also the personal data, and the player needs to introduce themselves, and that's where we have personal data in support use case, right? We have some tools, we keep it there. And payments. With payments it's pretty obvious, we keep payment details, player makes some payment, and that is it. So how to solve it? Each of the services, you've seen there are several services, it's on the backend side mostly, need to introduce some API that would support the right to be forgotten and right to access. So, and you need of course to think about how to protect your personal data on the physical level, but I don't want to go there. Like many like engineering approaches and best practices about protection, of course you need to think that you don't have like anybody who can access your backend data in the company. But in general, to implement right to be forgotten, just introduce the API that, okay, please delete me user with this device ID, or sorry, with this user ID, and that's it. Pretty trivial. For analytics, it's a bit more complicated. So we have kind of the best solution would be for you, since we keep analytical data and personal data for like lifelong, maybe not lifelong. There are some regulations, by the way. You cannot keep their personal data forever. If user is inactive for 3 years, 5 years, you have to delete their data. You need to define it based on your business model, how long you need to keep it, but you cannot keep it forever. But still, we talk about prolonged period, and we need to think about how to protect this data. Many people go to our data warehouse system, analytical system, and so on, and they can see this personal data. We need to avoid that. Otherwise, we're losing control. It means kind of like if it's we talk about big companies, so it's a lot of people, and risk also rises. So here we need to think about how to splitting the safe zone and danger zone. So we need to bring analytical data and extract it here on the ingestion where we start accumulating it to a separate zone, which is I call here personal data vault. And in that zone we can support all the different use cases that I just said, like support, marketing, and so on. So in that case, for example, marketing can go to analytical data to their data lake and data warehouse, but there is no personal data. It was extracted earlier, and then join the analytical data with this personal data vault together and serve their use cases. It typically comes a bit more complicated even than that, because on top of that, since you keep data lifelong, there are a lot of it's accumulated and aggregated and personal data from different sources. You need to implement some practices, like you need to think about physical security, access control, provide also audit logs, the same like in operations. But also you need to think about data catalog, how data flows, to provide the transparency. If you know about data lineage, you need to think about it as well. So it's, I would say, most complicated part if we talk about compliance, at least from my experience in general in gaming, mobile gaming. Yeah, a couple of words about personal data vault. Also, there are two categories, at least how I split them, of personal data. It's entities and attributes, player attributes. What the difference? Entities are identifiers. They immediately identify, and they don't need anything else to identify a device, laptop, or a person. And like these are belongings, and they also treat it as a personal data, right? But for player attributes, we cannot say that because it's a name, for example, or birthday. They, on its own, they do not identify a person. There can be many people born in the same, obviously in the same date. And we talked about city. So we kind of, if we split these categories, then where we keep our personal data, we can also control the access. For example, you say, okay, external communication or your support, they need to access to emails, but they don't need their device IDs, they don't need maybe even their first last name, I don't know. But if you follow this kind of, you keep all the personal data in separate buckets, then it's easier for you to control the access. So you will be in the better position, and audit will applaud you in that case. Okay, here about audit. Demonstrate compliance. Yeah, definitely. If you have compliance by design, you have a couple of fancy diagrams like I showed you. At least you will demonstrate it, and also you need to physically show it. If you have a lineage, and you will show the data catalog with the lineage, how your personal data is being marked, and you see how it flows and where it's being kept, amazing. It will be a very good sign that you will close it. Staff training and awareness, definitely there must be a program of your people that understand that they are personal data. Because they, for example, client developer, they define what personal data from the device they're going to collect. If they're not aware that they're collecting personal data, you're screwed. For that reason, of course, you need to have some identification, personal data identification system or protocol. You need to train your staff, or just put some ML model on incoming data that would identify, okay, here your developer started collecting IDFA, I don't know, like so. Please make sure that your people know what they are doing. Record keeping obligations. I forgot about that. What is it? So let's keep it, because when it goes to audit, okay, here it is. Yeah, it's about logs. So we need to log everything about when we process the data automatically, and when someone or anyone accesses the data. Data breach reporting for the black day. We need to keep also keep this ability to report on the data breach. Okay, so here we come to the summary of this presentation. As I said, like several key principles, very simple to follow, simple to grasp at least, how I see them. To follow, it requires some discipline, but also it's not that complicated. It's less complicated than user acquisition and modern gaming world. Just need to take it right. Okay, discover all data you have and do this kind of from time to time. Maybe some new entities appeared. Go to roots and classify. So classify the personal data. Also, which kind of it, what's the nature of this. Create personal data lineage. Understand if you really need it, and minimize amount of data, amount of use cases. Understand for how long you need to keep your personal data. Operations, 1 month, okay, bingo. You know that all these rights to be forgotten and so on, they typically, you can spend 1 month to enforce them. So you still have this amount of time. If your retention of the data, all the data, less than 1 month, you cannot even file, like, create anything else. Your data will be automatically deleted. You just need on your gateway block this user who asked their personal data to be deleted, so it's not reappear again. Prepare the new design and transition plan for your operations, analytical plan. So it's about the privacy by design. You need to have at least a couple of diagrams to show it. That's what you follow, and also you need to understand how you will enforce this design. Train your staff. I guess it's most important. And conduct internal audit to check, ask people from the outside to check whether you're in a good position or not. So, yeah, thank you very much. That is it. If there are any questions, please go ahead. Please.
A question, like, how simple do you make it for the user to claim their rights? Is it like as simple as a button as in the game, or do you rather make it life hard to like go to the privacy policy, find the email?
You talk about this new policy like in the US, then it's not in the EU, I guess. Yes, like how we make it. There are most common approaches, like you have a support, right? And on the support, in your game you have like ask a question. So you need to provide this channel. There are different ways. It can be a button. Okay, you can make it interactive, or you can, in a support, ask your question, please delete my data. So you must be also transparent about that. It goes mostly more to the law, exactly how you need to expose it to the user and formalize and so on. Users must be aware of that. So I'm going mostly like how to enforce it already, but not how to inform the users. Definitely you need to do your best to inform your users and be very transparent about their rights. So it's obvious. How can it be achieved? Well, if you cannot afford like this some interactive button, so please delete my data. Immediately after login, under login, you will have delete all my personal data, forget about me. I'm not sure, I haven't seen yet the applications like that, but I guess having at least support channel to implement that might be sufficient, at least for now. Mostly, believe me, problems are not about like which button where you have, and the fine's not about that. It's about significant breaches or non-legal usage of personal data. Okay, yeah, then thank you very much.